Hey, howdy, hi! Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by to join me today. I really do appreciate it. My name is Ellie, and I'm a witch. And this over here is my teaching assistant, Andy, and today is Sunday, and on my channel that means it is Cryptid Countdown, and today I'll be telling you about the cryptids of South Dakota. If you are new to my channel, this is a series where I take a state, city, or region, and I tell you about the cryptids that reside in that area. If you're not interested in cryptids, however, I do have two other series on my channel. On Mondays, I talk about history. I have a series called Misheard History, where I take a subject you may or may not have learned about in school, and I tell you the truth behind it. And then on Tuesdays, I do tea time and true crime, where I sit down with a cup of tea, and I tell you about a true crime case. But yeah, this one is super fun, so let's just jump into the video. So I'm going to start by talking about the takuhi. As I say in every cryptid video, every state has its own version of Bigfoot, and this is the legend for South Dakota. Now, takuhi means big man in the Lakota language. Now, the Lakota are a tribe that live in South Dakota. Appearance-wise, this creature is almost the same as any other Bigfoot creature, with some distinct features of its own. Standing between 7 to 9 feet tall, it has dark brown hair or fur. It has a flat face with a defined brow ridge, small ears, and glowing red-yellow eyes. Its long arms reach below its knees, ending with large hands with very sharp claws, and it sports short legs with large feet. Though similar to Bigfoot, the stories of this creature do vary greatly. Some believe him to be a guardian of sorts who keeps out invaders and intruders. Other stories say that he is an evil being that hunts animals and humans like prey. The most recent sightings are from the 1970s. In 1970, a film crew that was scouting locations for their movie were in Sika Hollow when they found footprints they claimed to be from the takuhi. Some locals were interviewed, and one man, Lamar Bear Ribs, stated that seeing the creature drove him to have a seizure, and the two women who ended up taking him to the local hospital said they saw the creature in their headlights. Now, sightings continued to be reported until 1977. In that time, many reports claimed cattle and livestock were mutilated, though some believe these attacks to be alien rather than the takuhi. After the 1977 reports died out, it not all but disappeared completely. There was some resurgence in the hype around the creature when two movies were released, Takuhi in 2017 and Werewolves in 2019. The next creature I'm going to be talking about is the Miniwashitu. The legends of the creature are prevalent in both North and South Dakota as it resides in the Missouri River. Long being described by the Dakota people as a rarely seen creature covered in red shaggy hair with a single eye, a horn on its forehead, human-like hands, elk-like hooves, and a jagged spine running down its back. In the early 1900s, we see what is considered the only modern sighting. A man was driven to madness after seeing the creature, though he was able to give a description before he died from the shock. It may be considered a fearsome, terrifying beast, but it is also thought to be necessary to the Missouri River ecology. It was said to make its way through the water, breaking up the ice during the harsh winters. Its power represents rebirth and renewal. Like other cryptids here, many said that it's a misidentification of other animals, likely a paddlefish or sturgeon, though others believe the creature too distinct to be misidentified as any other known animal. Next up is the Badland Banshee. Now, before we speak of what may or may not reside in the Badlands, let's set the scene and talk about what the Badlands are. Originally being an ancient sea floor, the clay has been chiseled away by frost and flooding, a labyrinth canyon that is equal parts stunning and oppressive. It has been called hell with the fires out. One could imagine that any number of fearsome creatures live inside, and that they do. The French fur traders referred to the area as Badlands to traverse, and the Lakota people simply called it the Badland. Within the Badland is a feared creature known as the Banshee. You will not see the Banshee, but you will know her nearby by the sounds of her unearthly wails. Said to be an omen of death for those who hear, she is not alone in the Badlands. Her companion is a skeleton who glows, and he seeks out the sound of music. If he hears a campsite bright with music, he shall sit and nod along. His violin he leaves within reach, and if he's pleased with the music, he'll retrieve the violin and begin to play it. The music being described as soft as the stir of the wind in the sage, and not as harsh as the cry of a wolf or as startling as the stir of a rattler. Do not follow this lovely skeleton player, for if you do, he will lead you to your death at the end of a rocky cliff. It is said that if you peer over the edge of a cliff near daybreak, you might catch a glimpse of the skeleton at the bottom, his violin just out of reach of his hand. Now let's talk about the jackalope. Now, raise your hand if you thought this creature was real at some point in your life. While unfortunately any mounts or taxidermy jackalopes you have seen have been fabricated, that isn't to say this creature didn't ever exist. Lumberjacks have long been advised to wear protection on their shins, notably stovepipes were advised, in order to avoid being gored by the jackalope's horns. Now, cowboys claim that the jackalope could mimic human speech and can be heard singing along or telling stories around the campfire. Notably, they do sing in a tenor. If you want to catch a jackalope, you can leave out some whiskey, which is said to be their drink of choice. Though much of the lore came from jokes, it is important to different cultures and area. In Douglas, Wyoming, some stores sell jackalope milk. There is actually a virus that causes rabbits to have growths on their face, so there could be a real world version right there. We also see evidence of animal hybrids described throughout history. In the 13th century Persia, there were depictions of one-horned rabbits. In Bavaria, during both the medieval and Renaissance, there are depictions of horned rabbits. In America, the idea of the jackalope is attributed to Douglas Herrick in 1932. He was a hunter and taxidermist, and when he and his brother returned from a hunt with a hare, they had thrown the hare onto the floor to deal with it later. There was already antlers on the ground, and the way that the hare landed lined up just right to make it appear as though the hare had the antlers. Off of this idea, they attached the antlers to the hare after stuffing it and sold it to a hotel for $10. Then they continued making the jackalope taxidermy, and a legend was born. Next up is a very creepy pasta, Walking Sam. Likened to Slenderman, this creature is more urban legend than true cryptid. Some believe sightings of this creature are actually takuhi, though we can never confirm nor deny that. Though going off the descriptions, this creature is real. What do we know about it? Said to be 7 feet tall, this is a soul collector. Some think it to be a shadow demon or being, collecting the souls of the damned, or in some cases, exclusively the souls of suicide victims. The creature is prevalent on tribal lands and reservations, so many believe it could be another boogeyman tale that parents tell their children, but for those people, it's real. There are not really any solid details on what he looks like, as one does not want to come face to face with Walking Sam, nor do many live to tell the tale. If you do happen to meet Walking Sam, you will be instantly filled with paralyzing dread, and it will tell you the ways that you are worthless, tell you that all the negative things you think about yourself are true, the ultimate goal being to drive you to suicide. In a literal way, the idea of a physical being who has the influence that Sam has is not as believable for most. The idea that this is instead how people rationalize the raising suicide rates among young Native people, or the rampant addictions, or intergenerational trauma that many face. Next up is the Lake Campbell monster. There is honestly exceptionally little to say about this cryptid, but just personally needed to pick me up after the last one. What we do know, the sighting took place in 1934 by a farmer who was traveling near Lake Campbell. Out of the blue, a large dinosaur-like creature ran across the road, causing the farmer to veer off the road and into a ditch. There were apparently large footprints found after the event, and livestock had been going missing for some time before the sighting. And that is literally the only sighting and the only information available on this cryptid. Next is terror birds. Now, this absolutely terrifying creature falls in the same weird category of cryptid that the woodpeckers I spoke about last week do. That category being animals that did exist, were labeled extinct, but are still believed to be around in very small numbers. Standing at a height of 10 feet and weighing as much as 1,000 pounds, this was an apex predator with its powerful and distinctly hooked beak. Being assumed to have died out alongside the megafauna in the Pliocene, new sightings may indicate this creature has survived. In 1977, a man claimed to have seen this massive bird with its distinctive hooked beak. More recently, however, there was a group of teens who saw the terror bird in 2005. They were fishing when they saw a bird who claimed to have a wingspan of 14 feet. There's plenty of speculation that it's just misidentification and not a prehistoric bird. However, we have not only been wrong before, but there was also evidence to suggest that what we had originally thought about when they had died off, or where they died off, was wrong. Originally, it was believed that they resided in South America, where they were outcompeted by predators that are closely related to cougars or coyotes. New fossils suggest that some were able to make it to North America, evidence found in Texas and Florida, and were still alive 2 million years ago. The wings evolved back into hands with claws, and could have been as small as 6 feet tall or as large as 12 feet tall. Some fossils even date the bird as being only 15,000 years old, with oral tells from native people having details of their terror birds matching with fossil remains. Like many other creatures in this cryptid category, it will remain a cryptid until concrete evidence of one still alive is found, but with the new fossil evidence, I'm a little more hopeful on this one. And lastly, let's talk about the Wendigo. Now, these flesh-hungry creatures run in the same vein as skinwalkers in my mind, though objectively more terrifying. With origins in Native American culture and mythology, these are well-known malevolent beasts. As with the skinwalkers, they are human-turned creature. If one resorts to cannibalism, whether to survive or not, they will become a Wendigo. The creatures are described as gaunt, looking emaciated, its bones plainly clear through the skin, its skin the color of ash, eyes pushed deep into the sockets, and smelling of death. These Wendigos are cursed to roam the forest, searching desperately for human flesh, though its hunger is insatiable, and it can actually starve to death if unable to find human flesh. There were also people dedicated to going out and hunting Wendigos for a long time, one of the most famous being Jack Fiddler, who claimed to have killed 14 Wendigos in his lifetime. However, he and his son stood trial in 1907 for the murder of a Cree woman who Jack claimed was becoming a Wendigo and had to be killed. He did commit suicide before the trial was concluded, though. This idea of killing her before she became a Wendigo leads me to the medical condition I found whilst researching. Now, this disorder is called Wendigo psychosis, and it is a recognized condition. It's characterized by a psychiatric manifestation such as paranoia, anxiety, hallucinations, and cannibalistic urges, often emerges as a result of a fusion of cultural narratives and psychological vulnerabilities. Generally, this psychosis is most prevalent in the winter months due to potential or perceived food scarcity. People afflicted with this psychosis will begin having cannibalistic thoughts or tendencies while also having an extreme fear of becoming a cannibal. The most common treatment has been to seek help from a native healer, though if this does not cure the person and they begin to act on their cannibalistic thoughts, then the person is executed. Many cases of this psychosis have been reported through history, or at least assumed cases, as it's not always been a recognized condition. In 1961, a Jesuit relations made note of some men beginning to crave human flesh in the winter months. During the winter of 1878, Swift Runner succumbed to Wendigo psychosis and he ate his wife and children, but confessed when the psychosis passed and he was executed for his crimes. There were also several cases documented through the 1800s up into the 1920s. In the modern day, there aren't really any reported cases of Wendigo psychosis, but Wendigo are still reported in many communities. And that is all that I have for you today. This was a really interesting one. Like I've said before, I love the ones that are tied to Native American lore, mythology, etc. I think that those are so interesting, especially because they have so much history as to where they come from. And also Wendigo. I don't know what it is, but I don't mind Wendigo. Skinwalkers scare me. I don't want to talk about them. I don't want to think about them. But Wendigo are objectively scarier because they hunt people. Skinwalkers don't. You don't want to encounter one, but they don't hunt you at least. Wendigo do. Don't really bother me though. But it was super interesting to learn about Wendigo psychosis. I have never once in my whole life heard anything similar to that. So to find out that there is a recognized condition that causes people to have Wendigo tendencies is super cool. And that's definitely something like I think I want to do a video talking about mental illnesses like that, ones that are super interesting. But yeah, that was super fun. You'll have to let me know if I missed any cryptids or if you know anything more specific about any of the cryptids I talked about. I feel like I don't really have much. I had a lot of cryptids, but I didn't really have much information on most of them. And I mean, Andy was super excited to learn that his kind are companions for the Badland Banshee. Though he cannot play the violin, that might be something that he needs to pick up for future videos. But it's super cool. Now he has a role model. Anyway, I hope that you guys liked the video. If you did, if you want to give that thumbs up button, maybe subscribe if you want to see a little bit more of us, and maybe follow Andy on Instagram. I think next weekend we're going to be taking a little adventure and Andy will come along, so there'll be pictures of that if you're interested. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.